Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Real Talk for Mums. Lara here and Mags. Hello, Mags.
Hello.
Today we're covering a topic that's part of both of our stories and our background, mental health. Mags is going to fill us in on her story, and then I might dive in depending on how the conversation's going. So, Mags, you were talking to me a second ago about saying, I'm not sure how much I'm going to fill in or tell on the episode, and then you just decided, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to be honest, open, genuine, as you always are. So where do you want to start?
I suppose for me, mental health has always been part of my life, but I never knew it was part of my life because I didn't know what it was. I'm here sweating now.
Oh,
And as a young child, I felt lost and I didn't know why I was having these feelings or what was this not normal. I didn't really know what was going on. And I suppose when I look back, my parents weren't educated to know what was right or what was wrong. And I don't know, to be honest, what triggered my mental health from a young age. I was always an active girl, and I did cross country running as a young one. But I had really bad buck teeth, and when I was good at running. And, it's a thing that I want to say to people as well, is I've been mindful of what our kids do at school. I was bullied massively because I was a good runner. I was bullied because I was a rabbit. I was Bugs Bunny. The only way I was winning those races is because I had big teeth, and at a young age, that's really hard to hear. I didn't have that support network to help me get over it. It was like, oh, forget about them, and brush it under the carpet and stuff like that. And I don't know if it went from there, but everything I kind of did then, I always was insecure of myself. And then when I got braces, I was called the train track girl, and everything was more nastier. And then when I then did a bit of rowing, and there was a bit of drama in that as well, and it was just and I don't know, like I used to say, why me? Why pick on me? You know what I mean? And back then, you kind of, well, for me, how I handled was I just went a bit off the rails. I was always in trouble at school. I was always acting the maggot, as we'd say. And as well, I had a learning difficulty that was never rectified. So I was kind of the stupid girl in the class. So instead of like me having to read out loud like you had to do back then, I drop my pen or I do something silly because I didn't want for me to the limelight to be on me, and I felt embarrassed. And I suppose I acted out quite a lot at a young age in school and stuff, because that was my coping strategy of like, if I can act the maggot, everyone will laugh at me and people will like me. And I remember a bunch of girls at school, and they were on about this other girl in our class, and I'll always remember it. And they said to me, "Oh, tell her she's got bad breath." And of course, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll get him with the cool girls. I'll say it." And I said it to the girl, and then of course, I was the one that was the bad person. And I suppose it went from there. I kind of always wanted to get myself involved with people. And my mental health was going crazy. I was like, I remember wanting to vomit every time I'd have to do something. But again, obviously, I didn't know that that was anxiety. When I went to secondary school, it got worse because I gave up a lot of the sports I used to do because of being picked on. And I felt I was never good enough. So I'd always be down on myself. I used to play Gaelic, but then in Gaelic, when I used to play it, there was a lot of crap happening as well. And I used to get into fights and stuff just because I don't know why. I like when I look back, I'm like, I don't know why I used to act the way I did. And I just pulled myself away from it. So I put on a bit of weight, and then I was called fatty. And, that was really hard to hear as well. And when I look back at pictures, I'm like, oh my God, I was not fat at all. But, it was really hard as a young one to hear. And then as you go along in school, this learning difficulty wasn't even rectified or not rectified, but acknowledged of what I had. And it was like, oh, just shut up and be in the back of the room, basically. And you always felt like the stupid kid. Then when I did my exams, I felt like rebelling rather than studying, because I found the studying really, really hard. I could not study. And I remember I used to try so hard, and I used to record my voice reading in a book. Back then it was the tape recorder. and then play it back to myself. And I found I was learning that way. But again, I had no help, no support to guide me of this is the way to do it. When I went on to do my leaving cert again, you know, out drinking because I was at the age, and I used to get so drunk, like absolutely pissed off my head, because it was my coping strategy, and act the maggot and whatever. And then I suppose my depression got really, really bad, and I tried to take my life a couple of times, and I was called an attention seeker. I was looking for help, and I was just a lost girl. I didn't know what was going on. And I felt, you know, I was never good enough for anyone, like even boyfriends, even though I had no interest, but I'd kissed any boy just to be like, oh, she's kissed someone, because I felt that I was never good enough for anyone. And then I moved on to college, and again, I just wanted to kind of get a fresh start. But you know yourself, when your mind isn't fixed, you're never going to fix you, you know. And again, it started to repeat again, and I did this college course, and I again, my learning wasn't there, so I was okay, right, okay, tried to commit suicide again, and then I was put in with a counselor with my mom, and obviously she didn't really know much about a counselor back then either, and it was like, you know, you were scared to speak because you were kind of like, and you know, it's like, oh, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you, you have everything, why would you be acting this way? And I used to, I don't know why I'm acting this way, I don't know why I'm behaving the way I'm behaving. I had no idea of it was mental health. And
this was what your mum said to you?
Yeah, and I suppose that generation and that era was like, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. You know, because they didn't really know what was going on. You know what I mean? And back then, no one spoke about their mental health, and I suppose in people's eyes, I was crying out for help, or I was tension seeking, but I was crying out. I didn't want to be in the world. You know, I really wanted to be gone. And like some of the stuff I did, you know, it was like we used to have bunk beds, and I tied laces around my neck one night, you know, hoping to God that I wouldn't wake up in the morning. And, you know, we lived in a farm, and I used to go up after a night out pissed off my head and get rope. And, you know, like, I know this is probably going to trigger a lot of people, but this is the way I was. I was just really bad, and I overdosed with tablets. And when I went to college, I overdosed on a bottle of vodka and medication. I was rushed into hospital. And I suppose that's when kind of the help kind of came of, all right, okay, this isn't right, you know. And but again, it was like I was attention seeking, but I used to cry and cry and cry, and I couldn't understand why I was the way I was. You know, I just like, it was just anything would trigger me. I never wanted to be the center of attention, but I'd always go out and get drunk. And I think that's why I hate drink so much, because it was never a good thing for me. The come down the next day was really hard, because I was like, what did I do? What was I doing? Like, you know, and all that kind of stuff of how I behaved.
Yeah,
And
the fear, because
I didn't know what I'd done that night. And then I ended up getting with this guy, and we were together a long time, but I was never happy in the relationship. And, you know, I never knew why I wasn't happy. And I suppose I felt never good enough. And it just, the relationship was, we were fighting and arguing the whole 7 years we were together, but it was just, I don't know, it was just like, he kind of saved me, I suppose, kind of thing. And then I was with him, and then I felt it was everything his way or no way kind of thing. And he used to say to me often, you'll be nowhere without me. And, you know, anytime, like, I'd say, I can't be with you anymore because I found it really toxic, he'd be like, well, you'd be nowhere without me. And that was drilled into my head, you'd be nowhere without me, be nowhere without me. And I felt that way. I felt I was no one without this person, and I needed this person in my life. Yeah, like, I tried, you know, overdosing again, and then I was like, what is going on? And eventually I got help, but it wasn't amazing help, if you get what I mean. It was just this lady that was talking to me, and she goes, we all have these thoughts, and, you know, we just
not
have
a
to learn how to
psychologist.
Not a psychologist, just a counselor. And we just have to deal with it, and we have to grieve these people. If they're not nice to you, you have to grieve them. And I was like, well, when they ring me, how can I grieve them, you know? And I said, I don't understand how to deal with that, how to cope that way. And in a way, when we moved to Australia, I broke up with my boyfriend, I moved, and it was the hardest thing I ever done, because it was a really nasty breakup. It wasn't nice, and I went through a lot of crap with it. And then I moved to Australia, and obviously my husband now came with me. We were just newly together, and he was really there for me as a real good support. And he's really chilled and relaxed and stuff. And I could be raving on about 100 things and he'd still be like, yeah, it's okay, it's okay. But then as we moved, we went through a lot of crap together. You know, my mental health started coming out again, and he just kept saying, you need to get professional help.
When you talk about your mental health, what do you mean when you say that? Like, how are you feeling? What comes up?
Like, how did I feel, say, back then? Is it of
Or
what
recent? It
taught?
sounds like it's been recent still. Like you said that when your husband talks to you and your mental health comes up, what do you mean?
So when we first moved to Australia, he couldn't understand the person I was, of how much anxiety I'd built up over things, and silly things like, you know, like walking through a supermarket was a lot because I'd be scared in case I'd see people, or, you know, that kind of stuff. Because I found, for me growing up, I always attracted people that would make little of me. And like, I worked for people, and my boss in Ireland was just a complete cow. You know, she was really mean, really nasty. I'd ask for some time off and she'd be like, nah, sorry, someone else is getting that time off. And I felt and I think, and now when I look back, and when you're in a bad headspace, there's always bad people around you, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, you didn't have the balls to stand up to them and be like, hang on here. No. And then when we moved to Australia, I worked for a person here who was the most nastiest person I ever worked for, but I was trapped because I was in a visa. And he was so cruel and so mean. And again, it triggered all my mental health. And I went and I seen a really good counselor who worked with me. And then I suppose it was the turning point then for me, of all this stuff that happened when I was young, and these type of people that I attract was something that was in me, that I was so vulnerable that people could see your vulnerability. And I suppose you see that now as an adult, people do thrive on your vulnerability, and they, if you're weak, they, you know, some people want to kick you when you're down, basically. And, you know, I got the support, I got the help, and I went on, and, you know, we had a lot of ups and downs and stuff, but we got through it. And then obviously when our visa, with visa problems, and I was like, oh my God, another thing that's happening. How is this happening to us again? And I just felt everything that I tried to make work was just going against the reins, you know what I mean? And again, it's down and a downer. We moved to New Zealand, and you know, I'm always trying to create positives of good things. And then I have Sean, and I'm in a complete downer again. And my whole world completely shattered. And it was really hard, I suppose, with Sean, because it wasn't about me anymore. I had my son to think of as well, you know. It was like, you know, there was lots of thoughts, and, you know, any new mom that's out there listening to us, like, it was really hard. You know, I'd be looking at the baby going, I was fine until you came along, you know. And I suffered extremely bad with my mental health. I was like, if I just disappear, no one's going to care, you know what I mean? It's fine, I don't need to be here. What good am I to him anyway? You know, I'm literally not the mother that I should be. And, you know, there was so much.
So you were thinking that whilst you had your
after I had Sean.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yeah,
I was wondering
yeah.
if you felt differently now that you had a baby, and you're like, well, now someone does need me, so how do I get out of my life even though someone still needs me? But
yeah, it was all that first 12 months of his life. It was really hard. I seen a couple of counselors in New Zealand, and it was just that we just didn't click. Like, one was saying, you know, it's trauma of your upbringing, it's never going to leave you, this is the way it is. Again, this whole grieving aspect of grieving people, and it's like, that's not working for me, you know. I've tried it. And then I seen another counselor then that was kind of basically, oh, I think your husband's not giving you the love and affection that you need. And I'm like, well, my husband's not an affectionate man. It just doesn't, like, it's not that. And, you know, then that puts more thoughts in your head, because you're thinking, is it my husband that's making me this way? And, you know, it's like, what is going on? And eventually I got help when I went to Melbourne, and he just changed my life. And like,
who was it? A psychologist?
It was a psychologist, yes. And again, I moved to Melbourne, got into a job again, and a horrible boss that treated me like absolute shit. It was a really toxic environment. I remember Sean was really sick one day, and she wouldn't leave me leave work to go to bring the child to hospital. And I was like, oh my God, here we go again. And I actually was just at complete rock bottom. I was like, Donald, I can't go on anymore. I need to get something to sort me out. And I remember before I seen the psychologist, I went to a doc because I was medicated from my teens
I was going to
for
ask
this.
if you had taken anything.
Yeah, so I was medicated, and then when I this medication, I was like, I was here, but I wasn't here, and like I've never taken drugs, so I don't know what it feels like. But I was just I was away in my own world. I had no idea of what was happening around me.
Yeah.
And like we were both, myself and my husband were like, you can't go on like this. Like this isn't life, you know. And I was like, well, I don't know what it's doing, because it was supposed to help you sleep as well, because my sleep was really bad. And it didn't. And anyway, I decided to go see this psychologist, and that was my turning point. He was absolutely amazing for me. We bought, like, the first couple of sessions were really hard. I cried a lot. And he said to me if I could get someone to look after Sean, so my husband would work out, that he'd be home when I go to see the psychologist. So it was just us, and we'd get it together. And we just went over everything of what triggered me, how I felt, and how I would cope with the situation moving forward, because, you know, I had all that guilt of the feelings I had with the child. And, you know, I said to him, I love my baby so much. I used to kiss Sean and squeeze him, but and the other part, I used to hate him, you know. And I was like, I don't know how to change this. And I used to be angry. And he's like, look, this is how you need to do it. And he just said to me, you just have to remember that he's at the time he was 13 months old. He's not going to remember any of what's been happening. It's from now on you make the memories with him. And we just went on a beautiful journey together of him, no medication involved. He was like, I want that medication gone. I don't want you on medication.
Amazing.
And we're going to go on this roll. And he used to give me like a little, like a scenario that, like, there's my bubble. And if anyone was trying to come into my bubble, and my bubble was my husband and my son, and me, and anyone else that came into my bubble had to get permission to come into my bubble. They couldn't just come into my bubble and make me feel down or make me feel insecure or make me feel that way. I had to get them out of my bubble. And then he'd do the breathing thing with me when I'd go in somewhere. And if I met someone and I felt anxious about that person, I would go through my fingers, and basically with the breathing aspect of it, and just completely change my life and change my mindset of things. And, you know, I don't have to impress everyone. You know, I am who I am. And, you know, I need to believe in myself as well. And I think that's what my main thing was. I never believed in myself. And like you, when you met me, you see me, I don't like putting myself out there. I'm scared to put myself out there, because I just don't know what's going to attack me or how I handle it. And, you know, like a really good friend said to me last year, I used to always say, oh, I'm just stupid, you know, because I was always labeled as the stupid kid. But I'm actually quite intelligent and I can, you know, sit there and I can say it now, but I couldn't say that before. And I learn, and I know now my brain learns in a different way. And it's quite interesting because my son now is the exact same way as I learn. He's very visual with his work, very hands-on, practical. The reading stuff, it just goes in here and out here, same as me. And it's lovely being on a journey with him now and being able to support and guide him. And I
That was
suppose for me,
dyslexia, isn't it, that you were talking
yeah,
about?
well, I've never been diagnosed.
Okay.
So you have dyslexia or dysgraphia. So I'm showing all the symptoms for the both of them. So
Okay.
what happens with me is it's all in here, and then I can't get it out. And when it comes out, it comes out. As you can see, sometimes words, like I know a word, but I don't know the meaning of a word when it comes out of my mouth. And then when I go to write stuff down on paper, I squeeze the living daylights out of a pen. And I have very bad grabbing issues, and they're all literally the signs of dysgraphia. And it's only something new. I think dysgraphia. I might have the word wrong.
We can have a look at, we can look it up and then add it into the show notes.
Yeah, and it's just basically everything is in here, but putting stuff to paper, and that's why I struggle with the whole social media thing. I struggle with getting stuff out, and like I have a really good client that edits stuff if I do stuff for me. And it's literally and my husband always says to me, I can't go to the shop and get bread and milk. It's that kind of sentence. If I have to go to the shop and get blah 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 blah, I can't get it into like a small paragraph. Everything has to be, because I find I have to overshare every single thing, or else I don't get my point across. So but then when I'm speaking to someone, I'm fine. But when I go write it down, I have the brain doesn't cooperate with writing stuff down or texting. And that's why I don't like texting either. That's why the voice messages are good. or picking up the phone and ringing. I can't text message it. I find I get, and it sounds crazy, and if anyone's listening, they might find it the same. I find texting gives me anxiety because you can pick up different vibes from text messages. And
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and you know, you
definitely.
might feel you could hurt someone by sending them a text message, but you don't mean that at all. And sometimes when I write a text message, I always say, I'm saying this in the kindest way. I'm not saying it in this way, and interesting things. But a lot of stuff as well, you know, I can't be in a lift by myself. I just totally freak out. I don't like even my sister-in-law did my eyelashes a couple of weeks ago. I was panicking because I don't like my eyelashes or my eyes being closed. It was just a weird feeling.
Yeah.
I don't like going into a room where the door has to be closed. I totally freak out with stuff. And it's really interesting because you know, I've spoken to someone else that actually was like, oh my God, I feel that way too. So it's really interesting how trauma can affect you in different ways.
Do you think it's from the trauma of the birth, or is there something that's happened all the way back
I
from when
think
you
all
were
the way
born?
back then that basically it's that fear, like as the psychologist said, it's a fear that you're never going to get rid of because it's something that and it's really, I get it now. And look, someone might totally disagree with me, but say now at our kids' ages, their foundation for their brain is starting now. And if something happens now, it's something we're going to remember forever.
Yeah.
And he was saying, you know, back then, like for me, all that stuff was so traumatic for a young person's brain. I shouldn't have to had to deal with that, but I just didn't have, you know, my parents didn't know how to cope with me. In their eyes, I suppose I was a completely out of control child that, you know, off the rails. And maybe there could be a bit of ADHD in there. I don't know, you know,
How old were
because no
you?
one was, I was 8, 9 years of age. Yeah. And nobody knows because it was never, you know, it was just she's off the rails, she's acting the maggot, as we'd say. She, you know, even your school reports, it was all like, oh, she's not paying attention, she's not doing this, you know, like even you get spelling tests and I get the same words wrong, but the letters have been the same places and no one could pick up because what happens to me is the first letter is perfect, the last letter, but the in between it's a jambles. Even your name, I'll spell your name backwards. I'll go Lra. And like, even though I look at your name and I go to write it down, but I spell it wrong. And even with my own name sometimes, and
We
it's
could
just the
just
way I
change
am. But
them.
you know, but no one picked it up. And I suppose why I'm coming on today to say this is because, like, I, for any mom out there that feels this way, you know, because I see it a lot of time on a lot of the social media platforms of moms going, oh, like, you know, I suffer from depression and I'm messing up my child's life. You're not, you know, it's how you move forward with your life and it's how we can get help. And I seek help and I'm really happy with the mom I've become. I am a crazy woman when it comes to my kids. And like, you know, if anyone picks on my child, I pull them out immediately. If my son is acting the maggot or trying to impress another kid, as I said it to you earlier, I pull him out of that situation and I explain to him, you don't need to behave like that. You respect people. And he has, as I said, his learning difficulty. I'm in there with the teachers working out a plan for him. And you know, even last year I got private tutoring for him because I never want him to feel the way I felt because it's not nice to feel it. And if anyone's listening and they have a child or you've experienced what I've experienced, don't let it get out of, you know, there's so much resources out there now. And there's, you know, even though there's still a bit of a taboo about mental health, we can help each other, you know. Um,
Definitely.
and you know, show empathy for people. We don't need to put people down to make ourselves look better. And you know, I find for me and with my business, I want everyone to walk out my door feeling amazing. I don't want anyone to feel like crap walking out my door or made little of, or you know, if they can't do an exercise, oh well, she can do that exercise. I never compare, I never compete, because we're our own person. And I think for me, I learned so much on my journey. Yeah, it was a real shit childhood of my upbringing, but what I'm giving to my kids now, hope to God, touch wood, will be an amazing upbringing and we can move forward together, you know.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That it's hard that you've gone through all of that, and thank you so much for sharing, because it's been it must have been hard for you to share a few of those things that have been
Yeah,
going on, but people listening would appreciate you being so honest. And now you actually get to change the lives of your two sons for the better. So well done you.
thank you.
What have you been, so you're not in anything now?
I
When you
haven't
were
been
on
on any
something.
medication. I was on something when we moved to Melbourne. So Sean would have been 13, 14 months old. And I was on that for 2 weeks. And that was the last time I had medication. Yeah.
Are these antidepressants you're on, or is it,
Yes.
would you say you were
Antidepressants.
depressed, or is it anxiety, or is it both? Because
I think both. And I think as well, I didn't like I didn't like my body. I didn't like what my body was doing. I was never happy. And then, like as I was saying with Steph's podcast last week, my gut was horrible. But like, I was on so much, and again, it's education, because when I had all those surgeries after Sean, I was pumped on so much medication. No one taught me to, how to fuel my body afterwards, what could help me to get my gut healthy, what could help me with my mind, what could help me. And, I suppose for me, hitting rock bottom, because I suppose that was the lowest I ever got, you're handing your baby to someone else, and that's supposed to be your responsibility. And you feel like, this useless piece of a woman, because you're supposed to be looking after this child, but you're giving it to this random stranger. I don't know these people, because we couldn't keep booking him into the same childcare because we'd have to keep a place. So it was random childcares that was taking my baby, and someone else was looking after my baby,
Yeah. Did you
And
recognize when you're talking about postpartum depression, did you recognize it in yourself that you were experiencing that?
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I was very down on myself. And I wasn't the person, like I was always negative. I was a pure negative Nancy. And no matter what you'd say, I try and boost myself up. But I suppose for me as well, like I try and boost myself up, and say, like my husband was like, come on, go out and get some fresh air. But for me to walk was hard, you know what I mean? I was either wetting myself or pooing myself. And that was really hard. And then, he'd be like, come on, let's watch him. Like he tried so much to bring it together. And but everything was a challenge for me, and being in the body. And like, I suppose, and I don't want anyone to feel that I'm criticizing or judging someone, but I felt paralyzed. I was in this body and I wasn't able to do anything with it. And then I'm given a child, and I'm kind of like, I even signed up for running challenges and like a city to surf, I think it is over there. And I don't know what I was thinking. Like I thought I was going to be able to do something like this, but I think my brain was thinking more than what my body could do. You get what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah.
And then all that trauma from my childhood came back because I felt useless. I felt
yes,
I was no good. Why do I deserve a place here? Because I've never been good. You know what I mean? And it just kept coming back that, nah, this is my calling. This is what I'm always going to be. This one that's going to be, like the bottom of the ground. You're useless. You can't do anything. Can't even have a child properly. Do you know what I mean? So there was lots of stuff built up into it. Yeah.
I have read that it seems to be a link with postpartum depression, one being that if you've had depression or mental health issues in the past, then it can be a high factor to you having postpartum depression. We actually did a podcast, there's an episode interviewing a psychologist, Angie, if listeners want to know a bit more about postnatal depression and baby blues, the difference between that and how to sort of know if you need to seek help, even if you're not sure, just ask. Don't feel like you should just put up with those feelings. I love that you spoke a bit about the gut health, and you being more educated now to know, but we still don't know a lot about mental health issues, about the brain, about the gut even, and they're still just bringing out information now. I wanted to share a link in the show notes about some more information around gut health and inflammation and how much of a factor that can be for the brain, because we now know that the brain and the gut are connected and vice versa. And I follow a few people around the gut stuff because I love it. It's like my core passion. And I wanted to share this article with people here because he was talking about understanding connection between what you eat and how you feel. He discusses in his podcast the bi-directional relationship between the gut and the brain and how you can influence that connection for better. He explains how stress, shame, and trauma contribute to chronic health conditions such as autoimmune diseases, leaky gut, and other gastrointestinal issues. and how gut dysfunction leads to nervous system dysregulation, including anxiety and depression, and how to heal that connection between the physical and the mental with good food and other things that he talks about. So I think it would be a good one to share with others so that they can do a bit more research themselves and have a little listen to help them, because maybe it seems like it could be a big factor to do with food, as well as obviously what people have gone through in their past, like yourself.
Oh, 100%. But even like I find, you know, everything with Sean, what like having Rory was such closure for both of us, for me and hubby.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it's been an amazing journey. And it's just like, I don't know, I can't put words around it. People ask me, you know, oh, you've got a really good, easy baby. And I'm like,
Bloody
I don't know
deserve
what I
it.
have. You know what I mean? Like, you know, Sean was a really good child too, but his mom wasn't in the good headspace. You know what I mean? And you know, and even with sleepless nights, I don't talk about it. Like, you know, someone said to me the other day, we never hear you complain, Mags. And I'm like, because this is just amazing. This is just like, I still pinch myself sometimes and go, and even I was talking to Steph did a consult with me earlier. And like she was like, how are you feeling in yourself? And I was like, you know, the difference of me now to when I had, because I always compare it, Sean's birth and Rory's. And I'm like, I pinch myself sometimes. And I was saying to her, I put up a picture at the weekend of the difference in my body, like, you know, and I didn't put it up because I've lost weight. I've lost no weight in the scales. I've literally just carried myself in a different way, more confidently, as we were saying yesterday. And my shoulders aren't rolled in, and, you know, but people automatically look at it in a different way. But I was saying to her when Rory's 14 months and I was touching wood, I was, I hope to God everything's fine. But I'm going to put up a picture of me holding Rory and me holding Sean, because that's the only picture I have of me holding Sean, of him 14 months old. And you can see the fear in my eyes of me holding him, because number one, I wasn't allowed to hold him. And I held him for people not to look at me because I was ashamed of the way I looked, you know. And you know, my husband was like, should you be holding him? It was my brother's wedding. And I was just like, I just want to do this. I don't want people looking at me, they look at the baby. And I want to do a picture now of Rory at 14 months old and show the difference of between the two, you know what I mean? Because as well, you hear people that have gone through different stuff with life and they don't want to risk, you know, having another child or stuff like that. But it is possible, you know, having that mindset, fueling the body good. And that's all I've been doing. I've been on a mission to fuel my body, you know, good since I've had Rory. Well, before I had Rory, but then I got Steph on with me after I had Rory, because that was my goal. I just literally wanted to have this good fuel, and it was just and just educating myself. Like today we went over food labels, and I was so amazed that there was 2 Carmen products of I know I'm gone off the subject now, but of cereal bars, and one, the amount of additives and extra stuff that I had, all this extra sugar, but it was rated as a 5-star product and it was good for us, but it wasn't, you know. And it's just amazing. And she was saying to me, like, some of these additives actually deal with our behavior. And you know, some kids that have ADHD, it triggers them, and then the sugar content and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm learning more. And it's been an amazing journey for me of how much I'm learning. But I suppose for me to get to that rock bottom and know where I want to be, where do I want to go with life? And I chose this, and I'm so happy that I chose what I did. Yeah.
Amazing. I don't think we need to cover stuff about me. I think this is a good topic to, I don't want to take anything away from this conversation that we've had, because you're inspiring. It's really good that you've shared this, and anyone who's listening, please feel free to ask questions. Like, Mags is really open and honest, and which is why she's sharing today. And we'll put links to professionals that you can seek support with, and I'm sure you'd share all the things that you've had support with, like what's helped you throughout your time. Do you want to end on anything for people?
I suppose as well, like for me, the anxiety is always there, but I have the depression covered and not covered. I have the controlled, if you get what I mean. Like, I've covered this when I had Rory. Like, the anxiety building up to his birth was huge. It was, you know, and again, a lot of it came from the failure, you know, like, am I going to fail again this time? And you know, like, I suppose for people to acknowledge those feelings as well, they're not going to go away overnight. And there's sometimes, like, I feel if my period, I get very hormonal, I'm really down in myself, but I always think of the positives, and I kind of come into a different mindset. And like, I find as well with the people that are around you, if you feel the people around you, like the bubble, you know, if you find that these people around you are making you uncomfortable or making you uneasy, or you don't feel happy in their space, you don't have to be around them. You know, as a young girl, if I had known that, I would have gone away in a different journey. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have just dealt with that stuff. Or like bosses, if you're in a horrible work employment, you know, you don't have to stay there. The world is huge, you know. And we kind of get it into our head that we have to stick in this rut because this is not right. But if you feel things aren't right for you, you can spread your wings and you can fly. The world is your oyster. And I suppose for me to tell people is, you control that. For all along, you felt your feelings, you know. Even now, having you in my space has been amazing, because you're like, no, Mags, we're doing a podcast. No, Mags, we're doing this. And oh my God, Mags, we're doing this. And sometimes I'm like, holy shit, Lara, calm down. Like, I can't deal with it. Like, and
rein
I think
it in
me now as well. It's like, okay, I get Mags is processing it. You know what I mean? And it's understanding that. And I find as well, you will get people that come and it's the true saying. Some people come into your life to say hi. Some people come in forever, you know. And you know, if you feel that you're in a friendship group now that you're trying to, you know, at the moment with all this, like your best Laura Jane leggings, you know, like keeping up with the Joneses, basically. You don't have to do that, because I see it a lot now. There's a lot of women that are getting on these forums saying they're struggling with money. And if you were struggling with money, you know, and that's a massive trigger for depression and anxiety. You know, we're in a horrible situation at the moment. Money, like, you know, you go to the shop now and what cost you $200 is costing you $400 now. And, you know, you don't have to keep up appearances just for the sake of the people you're around. Surround yourself with good people that are going to support you, encourage you, and be there for you. And you are going to get hurt, but it's how you pick yourself up from that hurt. I find when I get hurt, I process things, I over dwell on it. And my husband's my kind of like, Max, that's enough now. I don't want to hear about it anymore. But again, sometimes I'm like, babe, I need to process this. I need to figure out what I did wrong to that person for them to treat me that way. And he's like, sometimes, and I need to get it. Sometimes we don't do anything wrong to people. Sometimes we can have someone that's very jealous of us. And which I always say is crazy, because, you know, you think no one's jealous of you. Why would someone be jealous of me? You know what I mean? Or but sometimes there could be something that you do that person doesn't like. And it's not that you have to change you. If you're happy with who you are, you don't have to change who you are. We don't have to keep entertaining these people if we don't want to entertain them. Be yourself is my one thing to say to people. And please reach out to me. I'm really open and honest. You know, I shed lots of tears with clients who've opened up to me, and I want them to feel that happy, safe space. If you anonymously want to message me, do whatever. I don't judge anyone, because if anyone wants to judge me, they can just listen to my past. You know what I mean? And sometimes, what's that saying? Your past is the designing of your future. No, what's that saying?
I don't know.
Basically, what's happened in your past is who's made you in your future. You know, so and that's what people need to think of. Don't hold on to these hard strong feelings of hate, because hate is and that's another thing the psychologist said to me, because I used to be like, I hate myself. And he's like, hate is a very strong word, or I hate her. You don't hate anyone. It's too strong to use. I dislike that person, or I dislike this. Don't use hate. And it's a word I never use. But even with my son, I'm like, you don't use the word hate. And he's like, okay, mommy. But, you know, and I find for me, and people probably find it weird, I laugh a lot on uncomfortable situations. It's my coping strategy. And it's not that I'm laughing because it's funny. It's that that's how I cope. It's just like, okay, I'll just laugh it off and walk away from the situation. And if someone else is that way, someone else might cry. You know, we all have different emotions and how we deal with it. And again, that's figuring out what's your emotion of how you can cope with situations. Yeah.
Amazing. So I've learned a lot about you already. I just, I think
you want to just hang up.
I think you're even more amazing now. Yeah. So being yourself, getting the right support, and noticing the self-talk, and sort of getting your head around moving forward from what you're telling yourself is what I'm gaining from your
And I
final
suppose
notes.
as well, you know, people, just because of the job I'm in, you know, like think about like, because we see a lot of vulnerable people in our job, you know, that's just the parts of it. And we are in a society where everyone looks at their body and they dislike their body. Think about what you're fueling your body with, and think what you want to bring out of your body, because that could have a lot of impact as well, you know. So if you've got good fuel in there and you're happy with how you're progressing along, but if you're not happy, you need to change that. And there's no point in saying next week, because next week will come and go.
Yeah.
Set it ground, set it like, you know, I'm very black and white, and you have to go all or nothing and just do it. You know, there's no point in thinking about it, because keep going on and on and on. And every time you prolong that, if you have young children watching you, they're watching what mommy's doing.
Definitely. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for ending on that.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for
on my podcast.
Yeah. On your own podcast. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks for listening. We're going to add in links that we've discussed throughout the episode. And as always, we're here. Please do share us with anyone who needs to hear this episode. Write us a review, and we also have an email address, ealtalkformums@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Bye.